for products like Basecamp or Hey, you don't have like a 2-year roadmap,
No,
or you
don't have
do?
any roadmap. No roadmaps.
Oh God.
No, no roadmaps. Yeah, no roadmaps. I don't want enterprise customers. I don't want outlier customers that are paying us a huge amount of money because in the end, you end up working for them.
In this episode, I sit down with Jason Fried, co-founder of 37 Signals, the company behind Basecamp and Hey, and one of the clearest thinkers in tech on simplicity, product culture, and working differently. Jason does not do traditional. No product roadmaps, no performative product management, no chasing enterprise whales. We explore how he builds profitable, lovable products with tiny teams, the real reason why Basecamp caps its pricing at $299, and why Jason believes work is not war. He also breaks down the philosophy behind Shape Up, including why appetite matters more than estimates, and why staying small is a choice, not a constraint. If you ever felt stuck in a bloated roadmaps, fake urgency, or managing for the sake of managing, this conversation will hit home. When you're starting a new product or initiative, what are the first few constraints you deliberately impose on the project or team, and why?
The first constraint is like we need to build something that we want to use for ourselves. So it's that's because if you don't do that, then anything is possible. Then you're imagining every possible person, use case, customer, business case. You've got to have a really tight initial we are just doing this for us. And that's where it begins to take on a certain shape that really helps I think define what it is that we're here for. And so that's the first place I always start, which is what do we need? Why are we building this? How are we going to know if it's any good? We're going to know if it's any good because we're going to use it for our own stuff and we're using it as we're building it. And that really helps to keep it tight and prevent us from being wouldn't it be cool if, and it would be amazing if that, and here's this contrived use case that I'm going to invent because I can imagine someone else might use it. We can get there later, maybe if you want, but we don't start there. We always start with just us.
What other constraints? Time, resources, money?
So yeah, those are kind of like the ideological constraints, like us, right? And then we typically have two people working on something when it starts. So there's one designer, one programmer, and maybe me. So there's maybe three, but I'm not full time because I'm doing other things. So there's 2.5 of us basically, and that's enough. It's not only enough, it's the right size in my opinion, because it again keeps you honest, keeps you focused. It doesn't let you do things that are so complicated that would require 6 or 7 people to do. And it lets you move really fast, and there's no additional management layers you need to go through, and there's no meetings because everything's just a direct conversation. And so things just move really, really quickly early on, and I think that's very important. It's great to maintain that, by the way. Most of our products are built with, at the end, 3 to 4 or 5 people, maybe something like that, at different phases, but that's it. No more than that.
Again, I'm trying to imagine how can you build a complex project with a developer and designer. And I've heard you sometimes use designer and product manager interchangeably. For you, are that the same thing?
Yes, essentially. For the most part, yes. So product designers here, first of all, they do their own HTML. Let's say we're talking about the web, like they're making a web app. They do their own HTML. They do their own CSS. They also kind of run the project in a sense. I mean, when you have 2 people, there's not much to run. But we always start from the design because that's what the customer is going to see. So it's all about user experience driven first, essentially. But it's really it's a partnership between a designer and a programmer. It's not like the designer tells the programmer what to do. But someone does need to kind of think one step ahead a little bit. So we always do design first before we do the back end, typically. So the designer will craft something, make something, and the programmer will hook it up. Then they'll go back and forth and decide what makes sense and what doesn't, what needs to change, what doesn't. But it starts somewhere, and that's usually on the design side. So that's why the designer kind of serves as the project manager in a sense. And then sometimes I will drive a direction. I'll maybe share some sketches, some ideas. We'll have a call, we'll chat. Each project has to be driven by people who are doing the work, and that's where the designer typically takes the lead. Yeah.
That's so beautiful because one of my many failures in the startups where I started to hire management, and people do not work for people who just know how to manage. They want to work with people who know how to work.
That's right. It's very important. I think there's a deep respect that comes from listening to someone who can do the work or has recently done the work or understands the work versus someone who is just sort of imagining what's possible. You know, when like the designer on the team who's actually designing the thing and implementing the work on the front end talks to the programmer has a deeper respect for them because they're not just handing over flat Figma files or they're handing over code, or they're handing over is even the wrong word. Because it's not like, here, you do this. It's like that's the common interface is the code essentially. So both sides can speak in a language that each other can understand, and there's not a lot of abstraction there. So I think it's a really fundamentally good way to communicate, which is not like, here's this idea I have. I'm just drawing a picture, you make it happen, versus here's this idea I have. I've actually mocked it up. It's running, working HTML, CSS. There's no back end. That's what I need your help on. But like, I'm giving you something you can now work with versus something you need to recreate every time I have an idea. And that's why I think it's really important for everyone to who's involved to be doing the work as well and not just imagining the work. I'm a little bit more of the imaginer, frankly, at this point. But that's kind of my role, is to kind of throw an idea in there, help people shape it up, talk it out, work it out, and then they'll build it. But the builders themselves can do most of the work themselves. Yeah.
When I think about 37 Signals, I think about that you guys mastered the art of creating ship really fast products with a small team. Is it mainly that about the mindset or the shape up methodology?
It's all of the above. And also I think the people we hire and the way we hire and the kind of products we decide to do and the kind of products we decide not to do, I wouldn't tease them all apart. They're all kind of the same thing. Shape Up was born here out of the way we just organically figured out was the best way to work. And then we sort of codified it into something. So it's a product of the way we already worked and who we have and how we approach things. It wasn't something we dreamed up that we think would work. It's organic. It built up, and it built from the raw materials. Like a plant comes from the soil. Shape Up came from us, who we are, how we think, how we do. So it's a product of all of those things. So I do think they're all tightly related. That said, many teams, thousands of teams, I believe at this point, have implemented Shape Up, and they're not us. They're them. They're their team with their people. So, it's a methodology that was born here and grew up here, but applies elsewhere, and maybe not in full always, because most things, like most people don't take everything 100%. It's like, here's some ideas that make sense or are relevant for us, right? And then you implement those pieces. That's ultimately, I think, how this sort of stuff works best, versus like trying to copy someone else's method 100%. Copies don't really fit,
I wish I knew this like 8 years ago when I first implemented Shape Up. I will talk a little bit about this, but can you describe Shape Up just like in 1-2 minutes? What does Shape Up is? What is the main pillars of Shape Up?
Sure. So Shape Up is like a product development methodology, essentially, like Agile might be, or there's Waterfall. There's all sorts of different ways to approach it. So if you know what those are, Shape Up is that. It's a framework to work. Fundamentally, it's about allowing small teams to ship meaningful work in a short period of time. And the way we do that is by working on what's called cycles. So these are maximum 6 weeks at a time. And whatever we decided to do in those 6 weeks maximum period of time, we're going to ship that thing. So it might be a feature. We're not making an entire product in 6 weeks, but it might be maybe the whole product has 18 things it does, and first 6 weeks we ship 4 of those. The next 6 weeks we ship 6 of those, whatever. But it's always shipping finished work at the end. It's not continuing to layer on more time. It's figuring out what we can do in a short period of time, and that forces us to, first of all, shape up the work ahead of time, have an idea of what we're about to build. There's going to be some discovery as we go, and figuring that stuff out as we go. But fundamentally, we have a pretty good idea of where we're headed before we choose to do the work, so we don't get lost. We know how much time we have left. We have a good amount of a number of people working on something, so it could be 2 people, 3, whatever it would be. And they are tasked with figuring out how to do the thing, the idea, in the amount of time that they have. So that's a big fundamental component here, which is that there's scope cuts, there's trading concessions, there's this idea of like, here's the time, here's the people, here's the idea. How do we build the 6-week or 4-week or 3-week version of this complete idea, and get that out? And then we take generally 2 weeks off, not off of all work, but between cycles, so we can think about the next batch of work that we do. But the work is always figured out as we go on the fly. So the big ideas are shaped up ahead of time. We choose to do those projects, but there's a lot of unknowns still in there. We don't define every little tiny piece of thing that has to happen. There's an idea, there's an outline, there's a concept that's very clear to everybody. And then when that's up, 2 weeks, we think about what do we do next? What do we do next? So it's always, we don't plan 6 months ahead of time. We plan 6 weeks at a time. And that's kind of what Shape Up is essentially all about. It lets you move realistically, in real time, with some idea of course, what you're going to do, but not an idea of everything we're going to do. So we don't have to spend all this time thinking ahead. We can think as we go. And I find that that's ultimately the best way to do things, because you stumble into new ideas as you're building something. You think about new things as you're building something. You think about new approaches as you think. And I want to be completely open for all those things, rather than be like, well, we set out our 8-month plan. This is everything. We're detailed every little thing we're going to do the whole way, and then you just kind of like get stuck doing what you thought, not doing what you think. We want to do what we think, not what we thought. That's kind of the whole idea behind Shape Up.
So you kind of engineer serendipity, or no, that's something else?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, there is, it's not super loose. Like when we choose to do a project, we bet on the product. We have a betting table. We choose the projects we're going to do. And when we commit to those, we do those. And that's what we do. What version of that we do is what's up for discussion and debate and discovery along the way, essentially. But there's a lot of serendipity along the way. And afterwards, we don't know what we're going to do next. What do we do? Let's look at what we built. Where does it feel like it needs to go next? It's like if you take a walk in the woods, there might be a path that you can follow, but you also might get to a point where you go, what's over there? Like we've done a lot of, I'm just like flat. There's a hill. Why don't we take a hill for a little bit? Or I think there might be a lake over there. It looks like there's a lot of green over. Let's go check that out. And so you can plan every step of your hike before you do it, but that would be kind of ridiculous in a sense. You know where you're starting and you have a sense of where you want to get to, but how you get there along the way is chunked up into decisions that we can make as we meet those moments, versus trying to have it all figured out before we go.
I remember 6 or 8 years ago, one of my product managers was very excited about Shape Up, and we were 3 teams. They were like, Mahmoud, I want to start applying it. I was like, let's try it with one team. So we applied it to the T, and we just copy and paste it without really changing everything. And eventually the team started to complain about it. But then I start to implement a few things from it. So for example, this morning I was discussing with my team push notification. And after discussion, we realized that the team will need like 4 months to create just a push notification, because they went to all of these edge cases. I was like, guys, the appetite for here is 6 weeks.
Right.
That's right. What I took for it. Yeah, the appetite is 6 weeks. And this like a shift in perspective. Okay, what is the most important things that we can ship in 6 weeks?
So let me get into that. I'm glad you brought that up. I should have mentioned it when I was talking about the overview of Shape Up. So Shape Up is driven by what's called appetites and not estimates. So most development methodologies are about estimates, right? It's like, how long do we think this is going to take? That's an estimate. And then you go, I think it's going to take 90 days. It never takes 90 days. It's always going to take longer than that, right? You're always wrong, because humans are bad at this. It's like, it's okay. Like, we're just not good at this, all right? It's hard. So rather than have an estimate that you miss, we have an appetite, which is like basically a budget, which is a different idea. And we're all familiar with budgets. It's like, well, we're going to go on holiday. We have $2,000 to spend. That's all we set aside. Like, what are we going to do? Like, we have to fit it into $2,000. We don't have an extra $5,000. This is what we have, $2,000 or whatever it might be. Or we have 6 days for holiday. What are we going to do in 6 days? I don't know. We don't have 12. We don't have 9. We have 6. We have to be back on Friday because whatever, right? So when you establish your appetite, which is like, what are we willing to spend? What are we willing to bet? How much time are we willing to give? Then you work backwards from that versus how long do we think it's going to take? Because the answer is there's always a in anything that we do, let's say we do a 6-week project. And by the way, when I say 6 weeks, that's the maximum. So some projects take a week, some take 3, whatever it is. But let's say 6. I guarantee you there's also a 3-month version of that 6-week product.
Absolutely.
Or
Yes.
there's also a 6-month version of that 6-week feature.
Yes.
There's a year. We could spend a year on it. Absolutely. We could you can, right? And you will. That's the thing. Not only can you, but you will if you don't put the limits on. So time boxing is another way to think about this, whatever. But we just think we're willing to spend this much time on this. Not how long is it going to take, because we know it can take a shorter period of time if we say we are only willing to spend that much time. That is a fundamental tenet, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I've forgotten to mention that. Sometimes you're so used to something, it's easy to forget the fundamentals of what I'm trying to get at.
Even, again, I'm going to discuss the language later, but even the language, you don't say it's a hard timeline all of us need to abide by. No, you say it's an appetite.
That's right. What's our appetite for this?
Yeah.
Yeah. The language is important. I'm glad you picked up on that. It really is, because it sets the tone. And I think if you call it a budget or an appetite, people know what that is. A hard timeline that we will abide by, it's no one believes it, first of all, right? Because everyone's historically has been timelines, whatever, they don't mean anything, And it's too rigid, even though we are rigid about the time. There's different ways to say these things that set the tone for what it's going to be like. So, yeah.
Man, even when I create product roadmaps, I always tell my team, okay, guys, we're very clear on what we're going to build next quarter. Maybe the quarter after that, we have an idea. But for next year or after 6 months, guys, I can just put assumptions, but I don't really know what I'm talking about, to be honest.
Right. And I mean, think about, especially these days, how fast things are moving.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Right? So it's you think you know what's going to happen in a year? Really? A good thing to do is something I used to do. I haven't done it in a while, but I did for a while. After COVID happened, when it kind of sort of ended, essentially, in a sense, I went back and listened to some of the podcasts a year prior for everyone's predictions about what this is going to be and what's going to happen. So this idea of listening to a podcast, go to whatever podcast you listen to, whatever ones, go back to, today's, when we're recording this, can I say the date? Friday, March 21. Go back to March 21, 2024 and listen to a podcast from then. And listen to all the predictions that are being made, all the things people are absolutely certain of are going to happen. And what you find is that nobody knows, really, because the world is variable and there's a million things you don't control and a million things that can happen and all the things, right? So the idea that we are going to know what we want to build in a year, the world doesn't know what it's going to be in a year. No one knows what's going to really happen in a year. A million things can change from here. Why put the energy into even faking it? Just don't do it. I have a pretty good sense of the next few weeks, probably. And by the way, anything can happen in the next few weeks too, but they're closer to me. I can see them. I have a pretty good sense of probably what's going to happen, what the next few weeks might look like, because they probably represent what the last few weeks look like. Today's weather is probably best described by what yesterday's weather was, mostly. So that's fine. But the further out you go, the blurrier your vision. At some point you can't see it anymore. And I think that's a nice way to, people are nearsighted, farsighted, but there's some point you go over the horizon and the earth curves and you can't see. You don't know what's coming. Don't think about that then. Think about now. Now-ish is mostly what you have a little bit of control over if you want to use the word control. You don't really have much control over it, but you at least live in the now in a sense where you have a pretty good sense of kind of what's happening and what we could probably get done in a reasonable amount of time.
So for products like Basecamp or Hey, you don't have a 2-year roadmap?
No,
or you
don't have any roadmap. No roadmaps.
Oh, God.
No, no roadmaps. Yeah, no roadmaps. We here's what we're doing for the next 6 weeks. But see, what's the advantage of a roadmap? This is the thing. People
certainty, an illusion of certainty.
Thank you. Well, you just solved, yeah. But also, why would you want to be certain?
I think maybe it's a human need. Maybe that's why religion is here. I don't know, because we hate uncertainty.
here's what I'm going to say though about that, which is
course.
if you could think about the next year now, then you're capable of thinking about things like that. Then you're like, okay, I can. So, but why not just think about those things as you go? Like if you can, if you're so certain that you can think a year out, and you can certainly figure it out as you go too, right? And wouldn't you say that you'd probably be better with more information as you go? I mean, you're going to have more information about July near the end of June than you are in February, obviously. Like, you're closer to it. So why not just make those decisions as you go? So what is it about, what's so magic about thinking a year ahead? Why not just think a month ahead? And then when that month is over, think about the next month. And when that month is over, think about the next month. So you can be, if you want to be certain, you can be certain about the next month. Like, why is that uncertain, to be certain about the next month? Like, what is it about the long term, which is you're almost always wrong about the long term. So this idea that you're more certain, that the longer the projection, the more certain you are, it doesn't, like, if you really break it down, it doesn't make sense. You can be more certain about short term than you can long term. So if you want to be certain about the short term and just make more short term decisions. And they could be the same decisions that you would have made long term, maybe, but you're probably going to make slightly better ones, actually, if you make them more frequently than if you make them infrequently.
Yeah, I mean, my counter argument to this, which is, what about organizing go-to-market or working with marketing team? You need to have like 3 months to give in advance, or maybe to my CEO or to my manager, they need to know exactly what are we building next year, how we're gonna recruit new people, new resources.
Yeah, I hear that, but I will just say that, like, I'm the CEO. I run this company, been running for 25 years. Like, I don't need to know what's going to happen next year because it's a lie. Like, don't lie to me. Why don't we, like, can we just figure it out as we go, and we'll get there a year from now, and we'll probably get there better. Now, to your point, there may be some businesses that need to really make big capital expenses, big investments. You need to build a factory, like, or you're building airplanes. Like, yes, there's certainly some of that for sure. And maybe there's a big event coming up, like in the United States, we've got the Super Bowl, and you need to plan our marketing campaign that's going to launch on a certain day. Like, or there's a trade show. There are, of course, things that are set on a calendar that you might need to make more or have more considerations for. Yes, of course. And I'm not saying that that's not true. But to go into everything thinking that you need this idea of certainty, and certainty means predicting the future. That's the argument. It's that certainty means predicting the future, and it's like right there on the face of it, that's wrong. How can a prediction about the future mean certainty? It's inherently incorrect. It's a prediction. So, like, but you could say, well, we can, if we define where we're going to go in a year, we'll go there. It's like, you can also just get there more accurately if you can make more adjustments along the way. And maybe you'll end up making the same decisions. Maybe you make different decisions. But, like, where is the advantage of thinking a year ahead? I just don't really understand it in most cases, except for some of those exceptions. Obviously, I understand. And to the executives who feel like they want to know, again, like, do you really want to know? Or do you want to feel like you know? And if you really want to know, then you will wait, and we'll go there together. We'll figure it out together. We'll get there together, like, as we go. Why is as we go so scary? I just don't really understand it. Like, isn't that kind of life? Sort of like, mostly it's like people have a plan or whatever, but you go through your days and things happen and things come up you didn't account for, and you deal with them, and then maybe you kind of get back on track, or maybe you take a different track. But, like, the end of the year comes, and, like, you may have done something totally differently than what you planned. Does that mean it's a terrible thing, a horrible thing, whatever? Had you stuck to your plan, it could have been a terrible, horrible thing also. We don't really know what's going to happen. So I would just say stay closer to now and make decisions as you go, and give yourself enough time. Like, we're kind of making decisions 6 weeks at a time. You got to have some foresight, but the further out you go, the less you can see. Just, it is. And I do think of the horizon. Just there's a point where the earth curves and you cannot see beyond it. Like, there's a point in your company where the company curves. There's a point in the market where it curves. You cannot see beyond it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to think about what's beyond it. Like, it'll turn and you'll see as you go, and you can make more and better decisions as you go because you'll have more relevant information as you go. This is my point of view, and I want to just say, like, again, just to be clear, like, this doesn't apply to every business. It doesn't apply to every case. You can mix these things. There's times when we like are thinking a little bit further ahead because there might be a date in the future, or there's an event we want to sponsor, and you got to think about some of these things a little bit further out, of course. But for the most part, I don't think you have to.
Hey, now I'm shooting myself in the foot here. So I've worked in 2 unicorns out of 5 unicorns here in the region,
Okay.
and I must admit,
It's a good record.
Yeah, but
2 out of 5 is pretty good. Yeah.
30 to 40% of work was performative product management work.
Yes.
Oh God, and I don't know what is the, because I agree with you. Planning for the future, it's almost 100%. We're almost always wrong. And as a leader, how can I be comfortable with uncertainty, and even how can I create this mindset within the team? Because maybe because I'm worried that I need to have a roadmap, my team gets worried they need to have uncertainty, and we still do this performative action, and eventually we waste a lot of time and energy.
Yes. 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 But here's the thing, like, if everyone's busy working on like the work, where's the uncertainty? Like, if you're busy building a feature over the next 6 weeks, are you sitting there uncertain at week 3? No, you're like focused on the work. You know, like I think people get uncertain when they're not doing anything. You know, and this is part of the problem, I think, in a lot of companies. There's a lot of performance, right? We're gonna have these meetings, we're gonna talk about this, we're gonna talk about that. There's a lot of talking about things, and then you start to like, when are we gonna get concrete and do something? And if you're not doing the thing, then you start to worry. It's kind of the same in life. If you just sit around, you like start to worry about things. If you're focused and busy with something, all those other thoughts kind of go away because you're focused on the thing. So if you're always focused on a real project, and you can always see the end. That's the nice thing about 6 weeks, is like, it's not that long. You can kind of see the end of it. Then like, you're pretty occupied and you're not sitting around worrying. The default mode network is not on where you just start worrying about everything. You're like focused on the things you're doing. And then as you wind something up, you take a bit of a breather, you tighten some things up that you didn't get done maybe over the past 6 weeks. And that's why the 2-week cool down period is for. And then a new project begins and you get back into that work. And so there is no uncertainty, really. There's work to do, and I find that just to be ultimately, once you get used to it, a much calmer, more realistic, more focused way of working. Yeah, because I think actually what ends up happening is like, if there's a plan, and you're like 8 months from now we're going to be doing this or whatever, and then 6 months in you're like, there's no way we're ever going to get. That's uncertain. Like, how now you get nervous. Like, we're behind, we're backed up, we can't get this thing done. There's this other thing we're supposed to be doing. My God, we have like 2 more months to go, and like the end of the year's here, and there's no. This is where people get freaked out, and this is why everyone gets stressed out, and they start working crazy hours, and they pull all nighters. Like, is that the better outcome? It's not, in my opinion.
But so we spoke about constraint, but have you ever resisted imposing those constraints and later regretted it? In any examples?
I think I don't like the term regrets in this way, because things just happened and that's what happened. So like, I don't regret the things that didn't go right. I would say that the times when like we probably lost our way were the times when we kind of lost our principles, where we weren't building things for ourselves. We were imagining what other people wanted. We started maybe throwing more people at it, or like something wasn't right and we gave it more time than it should have gotten, and it still wasn't right. And like then at some point you're like, just 2 more weeks. We already gave it 12. Give it 2 more. And then you're like, well, now we're at 14. Like, it's not done. Well, then we got to give it 2 more because we already spent 14 on it. And you just like, when you just go down, when you slide down that slope, again, I don't regret those experiences because they're educational, and like you kind of come out of that and go, yeah, that was not the way to do it. Let's not do that next time. So I don't regret those things happening, but those are the times when you're like, yeah, we lost our way. We didn't pay attention to the fundamentals. We kind of got our principles mixed up. And it's always when you add more and try to do more and let things slide, let mediocrity get in there, and you kind of just make bad calls, and then you start to save face and the whole thing. That's when those are the moments I don't like at work. Yeah.
And even sometimes where you do those 6-week cycles, if it's the features dragging on, eventually you kill it. And this is something that I struggle with, which is, I'm quoting, I think, Stephen King, which is we should be really good at killing our darlings. How would
Killing
you...
our darlings, yeah.
Yeah, how do you decide to kill the darlings after a while?
So, for full disclosure, there are times when you will give something an extra week or so, right? It depends where it is. So this is why in Basecamp we have this feature called hill charts, which are these charts that go like this. For those who are watching, it's like a bell curve basically, and the left side of the curve is like you're still figuring things out. You're not over the hill yet. Once you figured something out, and then it's just an implementation detail, then you're over the hill. It's like a downhill. Downhill is easier than uphill, right? So if we're like at our 6-week end, and we're downhill, there's like just some things we need to finish up, and it's going to take a few more days. That's okay. If anything is on the left side still, like we don't even know what we're doing with this thing. There's this feature that we forgot to build. It's like, if we haven't figured something out, or we're still struggling to figure it out, no way, because you're not going to figure it out in a week. So it does depend what work remains at the end if you want to give something a little bit more time. But you cannot make a habit of giving everything more time. But occasionally you will give something a little bit more time. So that's totally fair and reasonable, and again, natural. To me, this is a natural process, shape up. It means that you're rigid to some degree, because if you constantly cheat yourself, then like you're not, there's no system there at all. But occasionally you have to have some grace for yourself and some forgiveness, and like, you know what, we're really close. We just got to wrap this up, or we changed our mind the last minute in the small thing. It's not a huge deal, but we need a couple days and we need to QA it. And it's like we can see our way. By Thursday we'll be fine. Like today's Monday. Like it's supposed to ship on Monday. By Thursday we'll be fine. We know it, but that's it. You know, you got to do that. Killing your darlings. We have killed a number of features, not many over the years, but a number of them, like in more than one or two, where we got towards the end, either we didn't like what we built, it wasn't good enough. As we began to use it internally, we're like, this isn't what we thought it was going to be.
But how do you decide?
Go ahead.
How do you decide if it's not good enough?
Well, because we build things for ourselves. We like you just, I mean, you have to have it's like there's a taste level or something that you have to have. Like, that's just not good enough. It doesn't solve, it's like, it's not better than it was before. In fact, maybe it's more complicated than it was. Maybe there's too many steps. Maybe it just doesn't feel right. A lot of this is feel. It's literally like, there's no measurement of whether or not it's good or bad. It's like, how do you measure a friendship? There's not statistics. You just like, you just, are they a good friend? I don't know. What does that mean? You come up with these things, but then what do those things mean? It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, it's a feeling, you know, do you trust somebody? Are they there for you? Like, how do you measure that? What is it? Like 9 out of 10 times they're there for me. It's like, you would never do it that. You just go, yeah, you know, or you don't, you know? So that's how it is. Like with features and with products, it's like, we put all this work in, like, are we proud of this? That's not like, are we proud of this work? Are we proud of it because the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it functions? Does it make the product better? Does it make the experience better? Are we happy using it? Do we use it, or is it just there now? And there's been some things we've shipped that are just there now that we don't use, and I'm not really super proud of them. Some of them needed to be there for a number of other reasons, and that's just reality sometimes. But for the most part, if we build something and we just aren't proud of it and don't really feel good about it, we will not ship it, and it will die on the vine. And that can happen. But it can't happen all the time, and it cannot happen commonly. It needs to be an outlier. You know, once or twice a year, maybe something doesn't work out as is intended, and that's okay. You're not going to you don't have a perfect batting average, or, you know, maybe people don't get the baseball, whatever, cricket, I don't know, whatever things are, like, you can't be perfect, right? So it's like okay to miss a few things, right? It's okay. It's fine. You only hit a few home runs. It's fine. You know, like, and you're going to swing, the best, baseball players, more back to the U.S. centric analogy, but like, the best players miss 2/3 of the time. Now, we wouldn't have much better record than that, but we're not looking to be perfect. There's a few things we're just going to spend some time on and throw out. And this is one of the advantages of the 6-week cycle, which is that if you have to throw out 6 weeks worth of work, it's not such a big deal. You don't want to do that all the time, but like 6 weeks out of 52 weeks, that's not bad. If you work on something for 8 months of the year and you have to throw it out, first of all, you're almost never going to, because you put in so much work and effort that you're going to see it through even if it's terrible. And that's a bad way. So when you have shorter projects, you're less attached to them. You can detach from them in a sense and be like, you know what? That one just didn't pan. We're good. Moving on.
I was working on the project for 2 years, and we have accumulated so much technical debt, and we had to do a revamp. Basecamp has been around 21 years from now.
Yeah, 21.
That's freaking amazing. So for the 21 years, because you know this more than I do, code is like milk. After a time, it gets rotten. You need to keep updated. How many times did you guys revamp Basecamp from the ground up? How many times you have to? What do you do with technical debt?
So you're always going to have some, and some debt is healthy to some degree. We've redone Basecamp from scratch 3 times. So there's Basecamp Classic, only, yeah. Basecamp Classic, which I think was from 2004 to 2012, if I'm remembering that correctly. Then we had Basecamp 2, and then we had Basecamp 3, and these are ground up rewrites from this no shared code. And then Basecamp 4 was built. Basecamp 3 became Basecamp 4. So it's still kind of the Basecamp 3 fundamental code base for the most part. But we're always trying to leave things better than we found them. It's like a campsite or something. Like you want to leave it better than you found it, or you want to pack out and not leave any trash behind. Sometimes you might miss a little bit. And you're always going to make a mark on the land, or if you're there, whatever it might be. So we're always making, there's always some stuff in the code that may not be quite right, or some CSS that we kind of rush through or whatever. But when you revisit those features in those areas, you do want to try to tidy up as best you can, because this is where you spend your time. You spend your time in this code, and you want to enjoy it, and you want new people to be able to come in and understand it. And it's very important to us. Like, code hygiene is very important to us. But it's not perfect. I'm sure if we just sat there and said, like, all we're going to do is make this code better and clean, like, there's plenty of things we could find to make better. The same thing's true about functionality in the products. Like, when I look at some of our products, I'm like, I don't like the way that is. But it's that in that place right now is fine. And maybe we'll come back to it. Probably not. I'm okay with that. It's not like the core fundamental experience, which needs to be very, very good. There's always going to be some things on the edges which aren't quite as good. But if I sat down and spent an endless amount of time polishing this thing into like a perfect gemstone, I'm sure I could spend years doing that, but you wouldn't get much out of it ultimately at the end. So, but what we're careful about doing is not throwing junk in the product. You cannot, because there's never ever time to come back later and just do cleanup. If you revisit an area, you can clean it up as you go and make it better. But the idea that we're just going to, like, who has 6 months just to sit around and like clean up the code? It's no one's ever going to want to do that. No one ever has time to do it. And it's impossible to justify, frankly. So that's why you got to keep it clean as you go. It's like, you go to a very good restaurant. Hopefully all restaurants are like this, but you go to a really, really nice restaurant, and if you can find your way into the kitchen is clean. Like, they clean up as they cook, as you go, and then you never have to clean up later. You clean up as you go. There's never this time where now there's pots and pans and garbage and carrot shavings everywhere. It's like you clean up your station as you go, and it's not spotless because there's going to be some stuff that you do have to clean up later, but for the most part, it's still clean, and that's how we approach things.
Man, the restaurant analogy is so freaking good. I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna use it with my team.
It's a good fit. It's really good fit.
It is.
Yeah.
So let me dive into another topic, which is staying small.
Let me add one more thing with the restaurant analogy.
Yeah, of course.
When you clean up your station as you go, you actually, like, you can cook better because, like, you have more room to work and you're not like pushing stuff out of the way and you're not making as many mistakes. Like, it's the same with code. Like if it's just a mess, it's hard to actually work. You're going to generate more bugs. There's not enough room to do what you want to do. You're like, you change one thing and it breaks four other things because everything's kind of duct taped together. So maybe I took the analogy too far, but I do think, like, I know when I cook, I'm not like a great cook, but when I cook and I clean up as I go, I feel like more in command of the job because I can see where everything is. I'm not going to make a mistake. You know, like I don't feel crowded on the cutting board. It's not like there's just a tiny little corner now in which to work. Like I have room, and it's a good feeling actually to work that way. Yeah.
Again, so I recently had a professional chef as a friend and invite him to cook. Two things I noticed. One, he did his own cleaning as he cooked. Even every parts he uses clean it. And the second thing is deli containers. They use deli containers for
Yes.
everything, and
Yes.
everything has a label, have a date. It's like a modularized system, not a monolithic thing that we have. There's so many similarities.
Yes. Yeah, you know, and I'm thinking of this as I go. Like this is not I had not used that analogy before, but we do talk a lot about, strangely, about kitchens and chefs historically. Like people ask us why we write books and why we like maybe share so much and write so many blog posts about inner workings of how we work as a company and our thoughts. And it's like because that's what chefs do. Chefs write cookbooks. They share their recipes. Like this is how you get the word out. This is how people try your food. This is how people go, oh, that's a great recipe. When next time I'm in New York, I'm gonna go to that guy's restaurant. Like it's actually good for business to give away the recipes in a sense, right? And so there is something about, for whatever reason, the cooking chef world, restaurant world that I do think is an interesting parallel to building software.
Let me jump to another topic, which is staying
Yeah.
small. And this is something that we made ourselves drink our own Kool-Aid. So I have this friend. She's been running her business for like 6 years. She survived a lot of big companies, it's a dog grooming business. And she's doing really well. She have customers that love her dearly. She really have low churn rate. But because we're in Dubai and everyone have a startup, she started to have the itch. She was like, Mahmoud, I want to raise money for VC. I was like, why? He was like, yeah, everyone raising money. I think I can make money. Look at my numbers. And especially when the world around you is pushing for rapid expansion, how do you decide which features, hires, or even opportunities to say no to? And what criteria really guide that decision?
Well, I think we're in a different position than your friend, because your friend wants to start something new. So I haven't started anything new for 25 years. So like I hesitate to give her any advice because I don't know what I'm talking about. She's better off talking to someone who started a business 6 months ago than talking to me. But in general, I would say pay attention less to what everyone else is doing and get your own stuff right. Because in the end, the only thing you compete against are your own costs. You know, of course there's a market, and of course there's other options, and of course, you know, you compete against other companies and their products. Just yes, right? But in most cases, and in her dog grooming, well, maybe that's not what she wants. She's in the dog grooming business now, is that right? Or
She's
she
in
wants to
dog
get into that?
grooming. She want to expand to
Start
new
her
markets. No, she have his own dog grooming business, but she want to expand to a new market, and that's why she think that she needs VC money.
I see. So the chances that, and maybe that's true. I don't know that business, so I don't know what infrastructure she needs. But what I was going to say is this: is that there are very few markets where there's only one winner. Very few, or two. I mean, like if you look at like airplanes, you've got Boeing and Airbus, basically. Like, okay, fine. That's not what business any of us are in. Like, there are hundreds of project management tools. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of email clients, maybe 100 or so, right? Like, what we compete against, yes, there's Asana and ClickUp and Monday and all these other things, right? Yes, of course. Basecamp is in that realm of tool choice for people. But at the end of the day, if I can make more money than I spend serving X number of customers, then I'm golden. It doesn't matter how big the market is or what slice of the market we have or any of those things. As long as I can make more money than I spend, I can stay in business. And my customer base might be a failure for someone else because their cost structure is extraordinarily high. They may have 8,000 people to cover, and they may have really expensive real estate to pay for and all the things. And they couldn't survive on, I'm just making up a random number here, they couldn't survive on 50,000 paying customers. But maybe 50,000 paying customers for us could mean we're generating millions in profits annually. And that could be amazing. So like it has to do with how you can stay in business based on your own costs and your own structure and how many people you have and how you work, more so than it is what everyone else is doing. So it's not exactly an answer to the question, but I think it's an important point when you think about competition and expansion and whatever. It's like, if you can expand profitably and the market is enormous and you want to grab more of the market, why don't you just grab's the wrong word, but like, why don't you just earn whatever enough to make more than you spend, and then you can keep doing more and more and more of that. And if you can do it and there's 100 competitors, great. Like, you're not really competing against them in a sense. There's a lot of choices out there. You're competing against, what does it cost you to stay in business? That's what you're competing against. And that's what I think is really important to think about. Now, in that case, like the VC thing, like if she's thinking she needs money because she needs money to literally buy equipment, that's a different story. If she thinks she needs money to compete, that's where I, like, are you sure? Is what I would just say, you know?
So I recently had the founder of Zeta.io. It's again, software management company. After they raised like $3.7 million after 4 years, they eventually closed down. And the founder, he was like, Mahmoud, working in the project management software, it's the most frustrating thing ever. And he told me even the biggest company that you know, they're not as profitable as they think they are. And for you guys, Basecamp, you have a cap where you don't take much. I mean, I think it's $299 from each company. You don't take much more than that. Yeah, that's insane. How did you resist just expanding to another tier, for example, or serving those really big companies?
Yeah, so for Basecamp pricing, we have three. We have Basecamp free, totally free. We have one that's $15 per user, and then we have what's called Pro Unlimited, which is $299 a year if you pay for a year in advance. Otherwise, it's $349 a month. But that's it, and it includes unlimited users. So you could have a company of 1,000 people using Basecamp and just paying us $299 a year or a month. Sorry. This is by choice because I don't want to be beholden to outlier customers. I never want to have a customer I cannot afford to lose. No, I don't want to lose any customers. But if someone's paying us $50,000 a month and everyone else is paying us $40 a month, I cannot afford to lose that $50,000 a month customer. And so if I have an unlimited cap in which people could pay us, I could end up with a bunch of enterprise customers, which I know a lot of people seem to want. I don't want them. I don't want enterprise customers. I don't want outlier customers that are paying us a huge amount of money, because in the end, you end up working for them. You're then a consulting company. You work for the people who pay you the most. Since all of our customers roughly pay us the same amount, not exactly, but within a very small band, we work for everybody. I'm doing things on behalf of everybody. No one can ask for special favors. No one can say, hey, if you don't do this, I'm going to leave. No one can apply any pressure. And I feel like that is a much healthier business than a business that has a dozen customers they're afraid of. A lot of companies are afraid of their own customers because they know how important they are individually, and if they lose them, they're screwed. I don't want to build things that way. Now, are we missing opportunities? Are there plenty of people who could pay us a lot? I'm guessing this might be your next question. Are there people who can pay us a lot more money? Of course. I don't need it. I don't want it, because it comes with strings attached.
How could you resist fear of missing out? For me, because this will be the big thing. You don't have it.
No. Missing out on what? Okay, so here's what I think. If I'm going to play this out, here's what I'd be missing out on by taking a huge customer. I'd be missing out on the stress. I'd be missing out on having to do things I don't want to do and build special features for them. I don't want to do that. I'd be missing out on that. I'd be missing out on getting that call Friday night about the things that they need built by Monday because they've got this big thing they got to show someone or whatever. I'd be missing out on like having to build special administrative permission levels because the way their organization is structured, they have 9 levels of people, and I don't want to do any of. And then if you don't do that, we can't use your thing, and you're going to lose $50,000 a month that we're paying. I'm afraid of those things. I'm not afraid of missing out on those things. I don't want that kind of work. I'd rather pick up another dozen customers. It says the math doesn't quite work out, but I'd rather pick up 10 more customers paying us $3,000 a year. Like in this, again, the math doesn't work out, but like I'd rather do that, feel good about that, than picking up one that pays us, $50,000 a month, which would be like 600 grand a year. I just don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that kind of work. I don't want that kind of customer. And another part of it is we like to build products for smaller businesses. Companies with fewer than 100 people, a lot of our customers have fewer than 20 people. Like, I like those companies. Those companies deserve extraordinarily good software. And everyone else in our industry, everyone else is chasing the whales. They want the big, huge enterprise. I could care less. I don't want any enterprise customers. I want to help the smaller companies, the hungrier teams, the scrappier teams. They're the ones who we are. We're them. They're us. I want to help them. I want to build things for them. And I don't want to go chasing the big whales. So yeah, I don't have that in me. The fear of missing out thing. I do. There are things I'm missing out, and I'm afraid of those things, and I don't want to do those things. That's how I think about it.
I'm assuming what are the things that you have fear of missing out on?
I don't. That's not something I have. Like there's so many things that I'm fortunate to have. My fear would be like having to go to work every day and do stuff I don't want to do. So that's the fear. So I do want to miss out on that. I'm not afraid of missing out. I do want to miss out on that. That's it. So that's kind of what drives. David's the same way. Like we're both the same way here. Like David's my business partner for those who don't know. We wanted to build a company that we wanted to work at. We wanted to build a day that we wanted to work, a good work day. We wanted to build a week that we wanted to work for a week, like that's what we do here. And so I don't want to do all those things that, people normally might miss out on because I don't think they're worth doing.
But what exactly you're optimizing for? What is the North Star metric in Basecamp or 37 Signal? Is it the growth? Is it the profits? Mm-hmm. Is it revenue? I know you don't really like this word revenue, but what exactly you're optimizing for here?
No, revenue is good. We need revenue. I mean, ultimately, it's as far as the financial metric goes, it's we want to make sure we're profitable, and we have a certain margin we'd like to maintain, a nice, healthy, padded margin, so we can screw up a bunch, have fun, get a lot of stuff wrong, and be okay. So it's like profit margin, basically. Growth doesn't really interest me. I mean, like, it's nice to grow. It's nice to pick up more customers, than we had last year. Yes. But like, I don't celebrate that because at the end of the day, if our costs went up more than it cost us to get those customers, it's not really much of a celebration. So I want to make sure that we're profitable and we have good margins. And then that's on the financial side. That means we can stay in business another year, which means we get to do what we want to do every day, which is the North Star, which is like, do you mostly have good days at work? Not every day is good. There's lots of days that suck for whatever reason. But do you mostly have really good days? Do you enjoy working with the people you work with? Do you enjoy building what you're building? How does it feel to be at work, to do this for your career? Like, that's the feeling we want to have, but we only get to have that feeling or have a chance at that feeling if we get to stay in business. And the only way to stay in business is to be profitable. Otherwise, we have to rely on outside funding sources, which inevitably dry up in different cycles. And maybe we're not the hot thing anymore, and maybe no one wants to give us any money, and then we're screwed. So profitability allows you to enjoy your day. Yeah.
This is something very important that you touched on, that you want to work in a place where you enjoy working. And I remember last week, I was sending a message to one of my product managers, and I was like, hey, I want this to be done by end of today. And then I stopped myself. I remember one of your books. Okay, then I was like, hey, when can we have this? When can we done this? Because to be honest with you, I've worked with the managers that made work a little bit toxic. I don't want to use this word. And I don't want to be this manager, but sometimes in the middle of everything and I have time less to do, sometimes I cause the thing that I swear I will never do.
Yeah.
And
I know the feeling. I've done that too. I mean, a good way to phrase that is like, look, if you need it done truly, 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 you can say that. But I would reserve that for those moments. I mostly say, hey, do you think we could get this done by the end of the day? Or how much time do you think this is going to take to get done? You know, this is the estimate thing, which you got to be careful of, but it's an individual thing. Or like for example, we're working on a new product right now, and I asked Scott, who's our designer on that product, on Tuesday. I go, we're doing like a little bit of a redesign of this feature that we built, and we have a better idea now. Like, let's try and get that up by the end of the week. Do you think it's possible? And he goes, yeah. I think we can get this part up by the end of the week. I go, great. So I could have said that needs to be up by the end of the week. And sometimes I will say that if I need to. But instead, I didn't have to. I got to keep that in my pocket, put it in the bank. And instead, we just agreed that, yeah, we can get this done. And it's just a better outcome for everybody that way. And it actually just shipped internally today. I saw it. So like, we got it done without any force, but with bringing someone along with me and actually making him more of a partner in that process. And then when the time comes, when I need to like really have something done for some specific reason, I will take that out of the pocket and use it and go, look, this has to be done by Friday. And then he'll go, oh, Jason's got like, this is unusual for Jason to be this way. Like, he really means it. I will get it done, you know? And he'll understand that like, it's very important for whatever reason. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't know why, but he'll know that that's not how I always am. And so when I am that way, he'll pay more attention to it versus being like, oh, the boss is being, you know, so impossible again every day. This is how he just demand, you know, that kind of thing. So by the way, I think it's very good that you're able to stop yourself. And you know, and sometimes I wish I could stop myself so that, because I'm not, you know, everything I'm saying is like what I hope happens, what usually does, but not always. And I'm not always great about it. And none of us are perfect at this, and we're all learning and figuring out as we go. So, you know, give yourself some have some compassion for yourself when you screw up, because it's very normal and natural.
I was lucky that I stopped myself because it was asynchronous. So I was writing this down. If it was like an in-person meeting, it would have been, I wouldn't be able to stop myself.
That's one of the other advantages of asynchronous work, by the way.
Oh, I'm going to touch on it because remote is something very controversial. But on that point, one thing, you're very particular about the language that you use. Again, you don't use the word sprint, you use cycle. You don't use timeline or deadline, you use appetite. And what else I can do or say, even for example, I used to work one of the biggest online real estate marketplace, and I used to be in a meeting. It was like, "Hey, we need to conquer our competitors. We need to kill out. We're here to win." And especially after I read your book, like the third time, I was like, "Mahmoud, stop using war analogies." And sometimes I used to stop myself, like, "Mahmoud, you're just selling ads. You're not creating a remedy for cancer. You're just selling ads. Relax." So, if there's any tips for me not to create a toxic environment?
Well, I just want to type something in while you're talking there. So if you go to 37, your listeners, whatever, 37signals.com/02 or just 37signals.com, you'll see that one of the things there, it says work isn't war. And we really mean that, which is like, you know, as you mentioned, I'll just read this out loud. Like, corporate language is filled with metaphors of war. Companies conquer the market, they capture mind share, they target customers, they employ a sales force, they hire headhunters, they destroy the competition, they pick their battles, they make a killing. That's an awful paradigm, and we want nothing to do with it. Work isn't war, we come in peace, basically. So the language does matter. It really, really does. I think it does, I should say. Whether or not it does, maybe it depends on the team. But for me, I don't think we need to employ that kind of language to make real progress. And this doesn't mean we're like soft, wishy-washy. Like, we're firm, but I don't need to like speak that way because it doesn't really help. And I don't think that mindset is actually useful, primarily because when you really think about war and battle, ethics go out the door, morals go out the door, you know, like you just do whatever you need to do to survive. And there can be a moment in a company's history where like you do need to survive. And maybe you're going to claw at some things you wouldn't normally claw at and do some things you wouldn't normally do. But if that's a steady state, I think that it's a really good, you can kind of see when this happens in companies when like you go to their website and like they've got a bunch of pop-ups and always offering this and always offering, everything's in the way because they're trying to sell you. They're trying to get 0.5% more conversion, and like they're battling for this conversion because someone set some numbers somewhere and now it's a war to get there. And you can see that like the experience ends up sucking for the customers. But somehow they make their numbers on the other side, so like it's all worth it. And I just don't think that it is, because I think at the end of the day, at some point it damages the reputation of the brand, and it doesn't feel good to put that kind of thing. No one likes to go through those situations. So my general feeling on this stuff is like, just watch the words you use. There are other words to use. And I'm not like word police guy. Say whatever you want. But there are implications and there are tones that are set with certain phrases that I don't know are productive. And so that's kind of my point of view on that.
I had recorded a podcast with Roger L. Martin, author of Playing to Win, and he explained to me why this happened, because business strategy evolved from war strategies, and sometimes we still use the same words as well.
Totally. And it's interesting because like you often have like these, at least in the US, you have like the business community like worships the Navy SEALs, or like someone who's been a Navy SEAL, and then they come out and they teach leadership and all these things. And like, I mean, deep respect for what they had to do and how they do it. But like, is it applicable to a team making software? I don't know, right? Like these might be great leadership techniques and approaches like in literal wartime and, in other places. But like the idea that everything's transferable to business has always been this kind of thing that feels a little bit slimy to me, frankly, that like every industry or every area ends up going to the business world and teaching their lessons because the business world will pay for the lessons. But are they really the right lessons? Like it's the one place where everyone's willing to pay for like, and there's this deep admiration for people who've achieved in other areas. And so like the business world will just like, tell us, because it makes us feel good. And we can think that we're warriors and we're fighters and we're great athletes and we've been Olympians. It's like, no, you're just making software. You're like doing, dog grooming, which is totally great. All these things are great. Software, but you don't need those lessons of like an Olympian training program and discipline does not necessarily apply if you're making business B2B software or your dog groomer or your restaurant. Like, but again, it almost feels like business almost feels like, this is going to sound weird, but like is like the drain, like everything just sort of drains into it. You know what I mean though? I know it sounds negative, but there's something about it. It's like, well, business will pay, so let's go there and talk to them about the great achievements we've made over here. I just don't know if these things are applicable.
Again, with all the respect to exactly those people, my friend, he worked in
100%,
Silicon Valley. They're a CRM company. They had Jocko Welling to come and teach them about leadership. Right. I was like, dude, I mean, with all the respect to Jocko Welling, what in God's green earth would he tell you guys?
Right. I mean, the guy's a stud, obviously, right?
Of course.
I mean, like, incredible, right? But like leadership techniques for like software development teams, like, I don't know, maybe they are useful. I don't know. But just my default reaction is, I don't know. It feels a little bit like hero worship in a sense, and less like applicable. Just like, let me put it another way. Like a startup should not be listening to Facebook. Like Facebook's development team, Facebook team might have 1,800 people on it, or our product development team might have hundreds of people on it, or something like this, right? Like if you have 4 people, the way Facebook does things is not how you should do things. There's nothing wrong with the way Facebook does things. Facebook could probably teach a lot of other companies roughly their size how to do things. But a 4-person team should not be taking direction from a 400-person team. It just, the lessons are not applicable. The resolution is different. Things do not apply. And so I think the same thing is true for like a war hero teaching, a CRM company how to like, ship something on time. it's the same as Facebook teaching a four-person startup how to develop software. They don't apply. They're not congruent. At least I don't think so.
You mentioned something very important. Startups try to copy Facebook. And the thing that I like about you guys build product is, you already touched on it, which is how does this product feel? And unfortunately, Google really campaigned the idea of being data led, which is do 1,000 A/B tests, which is fine. I love the idea of being data led, but sometimes we lose the sight of qualitative data. How does this product feels? How does it make you? How does people use it? And I don't know what to say to that when my product managers come like, hey, let's do 100 A/B tests, see what will happen.
Right. Well, I mean, I can't argue with Google's success. So let's be honest there. Like, Google's done pretty well. So if that's their approach, then that's great. They need to do what works for them. We need to do what works for us. You need to do what works for you. What works for us is the feel side of things. Like, we're not a data-driven company. We just aren't motivated by it. We don't like to make decisions based on it. We look at it sometimes because it's interesting and it can enlighten us in some ways. But ultimately, things have to feel good. And if the data told us to do certain things that just don't feel good, like I'm not interested in working that way. It's just not the way I want to work. Now, again, someone out there might going, yeah, that's why you guys are only worth X and this other company's worth X, 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 X. Like, yeah, maybe so. Maybe there's a lot of money we're leaving on the table. Maybe there's a lot of opportunity we've missed. Maybe so. I don't need it or want it or care about it. Like, we've built what we want to build, the kind of company we want to build. We've done what we want to do, and we're continuing to do what we want to do 25 years on. Like, that's a good run, however you want to look at it. And I'm very pleased with that. And if the run ended in 3 years because whatever happens, and we go out of business for whatever reason, like, I'd be actually David and I talk about this all the time. Like, if that happened, first of all, we wouldn't be thrilled about it, but we'd also be like, what a run. 28 years, happy with that. Like, our employees are going to find new jobs. We'll help them find new jobs. Like, David and I are going to be okay. Like, if that happened, that'd be all right. And I mean, again, it's not the ideal outcome. It's not what I want to happen. I want to keep doing this. But if we couldn't, we're okay. And we would look back on our career and go, we did what we wanted to do and we did it our way. And it worked for a really, really long time. Like, are we bigger or smaller than someone else? Doesn't even come into it. It doesn't matter. Has no bearing on it whatsoever. It's like, did we enjoy our career? Did we enjoy the work? A story I'll tell sometimes, I'll tell it here because it kind of got me in this mindset, is like, there was a time when I was trying to run, like, jog faster. I wanted to run like a 6-minute mile or something like this, right? Which is to some people slow. For me, it was like, yeah, it's a good goal or whatever it was. And I would go out for a run and I'd go for a run and then I'd run a 6:05. And I'd be kind of upset because I didn't get the 6 minutes that I was aiming to get. And I'm like, what? What kind of, I'm asking the wrong question. What I should say is like, did I enjoy the run? Was that fun? Did I feel good? Did I get some fresh air? Do I feel like I had a really good workout? Like, am I pleased with those things? Because that's what really matters. Not like, am I 5 seconds off? Off of what? Some number I made up that just happens to be a round number? Like, why did I decide I wanted to run a 6? What if I decided I wanted to run a 6:06 and I ran a 6:05? Then all of a sudden I'd be thrilled. Like, how is there that much difference in 5 seconds? There isn't. Like, the question really is like, did I have a good time? Did I enjoy that? Was that good for me? Do I want to do it again? Like, those are the questions. And so that's kind of how I think about these things, not like in relative comparison to another company or how they work or how big they are or opportunities that we missed or whatever. We took the opportunities that we chose to take. We did what we chose to do. We're doing what we choose to do. We're still in business. Things are great. But like, could have been some other way. It sure could have. And it could have gone the other way too. It could have been bad. I don't know. All I know is what it is. And we're happy with where it is and what it is and where we're headed.
I love the passion that comes out of you. I swear, you've done this for 28 years and you still have the fire in
25.
you.
25.
28 years.
I have
25
less
years.
Fire. I mean, I have less fire than I
Less
used to.
fire than now. Oh, God.
No. Now I have less fire than I did, let's say, 20 years ago. But that's also natural. And I'm okay with that. I have enough fire. Again, it's like, we have enough fire. We're making 2 new products right now. I'm excited about them. We're making Hey better. We're making Basecamp better. We got a great team. We're feeling good. Like, were there times in my life where I was more ambitious and more driven? Yeah, of course there were. Were there times when I had like a bigger chip on my shoulder and I was pissed and I was new and I wanted to, make a dent in the world and show off? Yeah, of course there were. I don't have those feelings right now, but I don't need those feelings either. And maybe there's a point where I don't have enough feeling left and it's time to go. Of course, that's going to happen too. It almost always does. But I'm pumped with where we are now. I feel good about what we're doing. I don't, the way to, I think the way to sustain this and maintain this is to not compare yourself to others. Because unless you have an endless deep well of ambition and drive, there's going to come a point where you're never going to get what other people have or be as big as someone else is or whatever. And there's some points in your life where you're like, I'm going for it no matter what, and you just have an endless well and you go. But there's a point where you don't. I got 2 kids now. Like, I've got other things in my life that are important to me. When I was 21, I was solo and doing my own thing. I could do whatever the hell I wanted, right? I don't have that anymore. So, like, there's other things that drive me. I don't have that endless well of fight to go get whatever. So you have to like stop looking for that and go like, how are we doing? Like, is our business good? Do I like the people I work with? Am I excited about the products we're working on? Do I enjoy the day-to-day work? Yeah. So we're good. We're good.
Man, when my early 20s, I used to work solely for money. And
Yeah.
one of the worst thing that happened to me is I got money. And this really demotivated me, and I kind of lost the fire that I used to have. And then I started looking for impact and what I can improve. For you, you're 100% not doing it for money. You have more than enough. I'm just looking, what is the secret behind this fire that you still have all of these years?
Secret. There's no secret. Ultimately, it's it's taking pride in the work. And so if you enjoy the work and you take pride in the work and you want to do a good job because that's what drives you, is to like make great things or good enough things, some whatever. I don't like to say like our work is great. I don't love that. It's a little bit egocentric in a sense, but like I'm very proud of the work we do. I think we do very, very good stuff, right? I enjoy that process. I enjoy the process of creation. I enjoy the process of crafting something and making something and seeing it come to life. And I still enjoy that. And that is what it is. It's not like a spark as much as it's like an interest. I'm interested in this, It's fun to sketch and draw and come up with ideas and see them come to life. Like, that's a fun thing to do, to make, to create. And I don't know how to create much else. Like there's other things I'd like to do. Like I'd like to learn. I've taught ceramics is something that I've always been interested in doing. Like to create pots and plates and whatever. Like I'm into that. I'm not good at it. I need to spend more time on it at some point in my life. But I will probably create those things when it's time to do that. But right now, I like making software. I like making this stuff, and I like working with great people who like making this stuff. And that's like all it takes. The fact that we have built a profitable company allows us to say that's all it takes. Like, if we were hemorrhaging money and losing money, like maybe I wouldn't be so like, it's just about making good stuff, right? I don't know. But that's where I am. I am allowed to say that because that's what we've done. And so that's what I say. And that's what I mean. And that's it.
One of our, the godfather of modern product managers, Martin Keegan, and we had several conversations with him before, and there are several pillars for innovation. And one of them is colocation. And he believes that colocation is very important for innovation. And he argues that you need to have the product manager, designer, developer, QA in one place where you can bounce off ideas. And you kind of argue differently. And again, you wrote the book about remote. How can you optimize for innovation?
Well, I would say that both are true. Like, there are times when being together is very, very useful. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, I flew one of our designers. I live in LA right now. Flew him out to LA, and we hung out for 2 days and like did some high intensity work. And it was healthy. It was great. And we got more things done those 2 days than we normally would have, because there is an advantage to being together. But there's also a disadvantage to being together, which is that there's not a lot of time to do a lot of good work when you're just on top of each other, talking all the time. And you tend to talk a lot when you're together. So we have these high intensity moments, and then we go away. And then we go heads down and get a lot of stuff done. And then we fill in the gaps with Zoom or a phone call or Basecamp or whatever we do. And then occasionally we'll get together. Like our company gets together as a company twice a year for a week. We fly everybody into a different city. Well, same city, but we pick a different city usually every time. And we hang out for a week. And those 2 weeks a year where we see everybody is enough. FaceTime, to have high intensity conversations, to share a meal, to share the same air, to see each other as humans. And then we go back and we do some work. And so I believe him in that there's value in that. I also think there's a lot of cost with too much together time. And I'm used to working this way. He's used to working his way. So we're all going to defend the way that's worked for us. So it's easy for him to say, like, he needs that because that's what he's had. And I've worked this way, and I would say I need this because it's what I've had. But I think it's a little bit of a hybrid, frankly. I think you need some FaceTime. And Zoom is pretty close, but you also sometimes need to sit next to each other for a while in a room and hang out and do some stuff rapid fire. And there's an energy that comes from humans being together for sure. But we found that David actually, and I discovered this way back in the day. David was in Denmark. When I met David, he lived in Denmark. I lived in Chicago. So we were, I think it was 6 hours apart or something like that, 6-7 hours apart with the time zones. And we had met we worked together for, I don't know, a year plus before we actually met in person. I don't even remember how long it was, but it was a long time. And then he moved to Chicago and we got a lot of stuff done. Like we were highly productive because when I was sleeping, he was working. And when he was sleeping, I was working. That was just the way but we had like a couple hours of overlap, which is enough. Then we could stop bothering each other, literally, because like I was sleeping and he was working and he was working and I was sleeping or whatever. So then he moved to Chicago eventually. And we're in the same room because we rented like a space. And we got less stuff done. Because it's so easy to be like, hey, what do you think of this? And hey, what about that? And you end up just like not being as heads down. And then we realized that like, even though we're in the same city, we're going to like work from our homes more. And they'll come together occasionally and then go apart most of the time. And that's the pattern that's worked well for us. So I don't want to tell anybody how they should work. And like when some companies bring everyone back to the office and people who are like remote work advocates criticize that, I'm like, maybe that company knows more than you do about their people and their work and what they want to do. Maybe they didn't get enough chance. Maybe they did. I don't know. Whatever works best for them works best for them. Whatever works best for you works best for you. Like both of these things should be options, and you should figure out what works best for you. And it could be a combination, which is I think what works best for us. But we're primarily remote and like 5% in person, and that's enough for us.
The common mistakes that I see most startups here is they have some initial traction, they build momentum, and there's something happen, they rest on the laurels, and their momentum dies. And there is something magical about restarting this momentum again. And this is something I'm currently facing in the current startup, and I have several friends are facing at the moment. You've maintained really good momentum over, it appears to me, across the whole 25 years. How did you keep that momentum going? And when you lost this momentum, how did you pick it up as well?
What you're seeing is not reality, right? In a sense, like, so you're seeing like parts of it. But yeah, there's times when we fall into lulls and holes, and then, or we're like maintaining, like, I'll give you a good example. Like we for a while, we were just doing Basecamp. We'd sort of dropped our other products. This is years ago. We used to have 4 products: Basecamp, Campfire, High-Rise, and Backpack. We eventually decided to go all in on Basecamp alone. Did that for a number of years. And we made it really, really good. But then it started to feel like a little bit routine because we're just maintaining one thing. And then we had this itch. So I'd say that's kind of a little bit of a lull, frankly. And then we had this itch to make something else, which eventually turned into Hey, the email thing we launched. That was our new foray into building new products again. And that like got us out of that rut in a sense. And since then, we've built 2 other products, Campfire again, and then Writebook. And now we're building 2 more products. And so we're back in this momentum of building new products again. But they have to be sparked by an idea and a feeling again, and something we want to build because we really need it. And sometimes it's just like there's periods of time where like you're just in maintenance mode And that can be actually very healthy and sustaining for quite a while. But if you have the itch to make something new and you suppress it, then it's not very good. So I think you've got to just, again, pay very close attention to like how you're feeling and how you're doing and what you're doing and what makes you feel right and what makes you feel wrong, and get a sense of that and be willing to do some stuff that you don't want to do for an extended period of time, but not forever. So we have gone naturally in waves for sure. And I think from the outside, we don't really, you're not watching us day to day. No one watches anyone else day to day, hour to hour. So you hear about things. When you hear about things, you assume like everything's like great or whatever. But there's also just, it's peaks and valleys. And that's just natural.
This was been one of my best episodes because it felt like a conversation, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's like I'm interviewing your questions.
Well, it's great. It was great fun. I enjoyed it very much, and I thought your questions were great. And I'm happy to do it again if you ever want to. Part two or whatever. It'd be great.
I'm gonna beg after a few months. I'm gonna beg for a second podcast.
Okay.
But since we reached again, I'm just want to say. Probably get this a lot, but I just want to say thank you for writing the books and the blogs. And it really helped me to grow from an engineer to product manager to a founder, now to a leader. And I want to create impact, but I want to create impact and I don't want to be an awful manager as well. So especially the book of new ways of working, which is, I have like 6 copies here. I just give it away to all the managers. I'm like, guys, there's a different way of working that we used to, guys. Cool. So I just want to say from bottom of my heart, really, really thank you. But since we reached the end, if there's any way that we can target our audience, is it your website, blogs, or Basecamp? Hey, where should our audience go to learn more?
Well, you can go to basecamp.com, hey.com, HEY.com. We're on Twitter or X and LinkedIn. It's at Jason Fried on both platforms, wherever. And just 37 Signals is another good place to go kind of read about the philosophy of the company. It's sort of like our philosophical side, and then the other ones are the product side. And then, check out our books, Rework. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. Shape Up, Getting Real. There's a whole bunch of books out there you can check out. I think that's enough material for a while.